working in a rural or isolated community. There's always a lot of discussion about this because in most countries around the world it's very hard to get medical graduates to go and leave the big cities and go and work in isolated rural areas where they're really needed. It's a real problem, you know. In the grand old days in the 50s and 60s, a lot of UK graduates who came to Australia were very excited about the prospects and challenges of working in these isolated areas. But that kindred spirit, or that's a heroic spirit or pioneering spirit, seems to have disappeared actually. Our new graduates seem to be very nervous. They want second opinions, they want residents, registrars, fellows around to hold their hand, you know. I know there are rural medical schools and hopefully they're a step in the right direction. Now, what is an isolated area? Well, in the and why generally in the UK they have villages and they seem to be highly coveted and everybody wants to work in nice setup. In New Zealand, well, it's a small country, so I suppose you're not really isolated to a great deal as you are, say, in Australia. Australia, boy, is that isolation, not only by distance, by the climate, flooding, bushfire, poor roads, lousy air services. You're isolated. Now, in the US, yes, another big country, you're isolated. But at least in the US, you've got great air services which can allow you to get in and out relatively easily in terms of income. Now, let's look at a few. Sometimes you hear these professors of rural health talking, it doesn't really ring true. It just looks like they got this cushy job because they couldn't find. There's no clinical studies or what they consider valid clinical. And doing it, maybe a brief term as a medical student or resident. So now, these are things you need to consider when you go into the country. One, professional isolation. That's really real, you know. You treat a lot of problems, a lot of really serious problems. It's nice to have a colleague nearby in the next room you can discuss a case with. Yeah, I know there's a phone and the internet, but you know, it's nothing like having a colleague look at an x-ray, look at a test, look at a patient with you. So, you know, you've got to be a bit experienced before you go out in these areas to feel a lot more confident. Second thing is your family, effect on your family. Now, I'm being a bit sexist, I'm sorry, but I'm just being pragmatic. You know, your wife, she might get very lonely. Some of these smaller communities can give hell to the wife, you know. Like, if she doesn't mix with them, she's a snob. If she does mix a lot with them, she's too common. So I was in one general practice in the country, and you know, every doctor there ended up divorced. Their wives couldn't take it, they all left. So unless you can get a girl who's used to the country, happy with the country, you know, this is a real problem for you. Now, your children, well, you want to give your children the same opportunities you had in life. You want them to go to a good school. Sometimes the schools in these communities are really lousy, you know. So you've got to send the boarding school. So you're going to miss your children, and you're going to have huge boarding fees to pay. Third thing is income. Okay, let's talk about income. Income will be good because, you know, there's no competition. You've got to be a little sensitive to local community if there's high unemployment rates, because you've still got a moral, ethical duty to provide service in the area. But generally, your income is good. However, there is one thing, your house. You know, a lot of towns, your houses aren't worth much. Whereas if you just in the big city get a house in a good area, it just goes up. You don't even really need to work that hard. Your house will go up and become a valuable asset and actually be the basis of your wealth later. So in the isolated area, you've got to think about maybe getting an investment house in a big city so you're not losing out too much. Now, I hope those things help you, but you know, one other thing, there are some other very serious considerations. I know a lot of colleagues who, like me, have worked as a GP and a specialist both in the country and the city. You know, some things happen that you just can't believe. In the country or isolated areas, you're there as a specialist, and you know, the local hospital almost holds you to ransom. You might have bought a house there, be locked into the area, and they start behaving despicably towards you, very demanding, unreasonable, because they think, oh, you can't go anywhere, and if you're there, you mustn't be much good. So these can be very disappointing factors and something that you can really get upset about. Hey, look, there's my phone. Someone must be after me. Anyway, they'll wait a few minutes. The other thing in the local community is that, you know, you lose all your privacy. Every time you go out to the supermarket, go to a restaurant, you're going to see patients you've seen or treated. And this can be quite difficult for you, you know. You never really get any privacy, a time where you can relax, because you're always under the magnifying glass. Having said all that, I must say, I really enjoy working in an isolated area. I find that my other colleagues, general practitioners, are just a great group of guys. You know, they're very dedicated, and you know, they're a lot better than most of the ones in the city, who, especially in my particular area, I feel they're just taking it easy. They're not really providing service for the community and just spending their career looking after number one. So anyway, only that I was lucky enough to find a great wife to put it back. Maybe leave it till later on in your career when you're a lot more confident. Your children are growing up, and so you don't have to send them off to boarding school, and maybe your wife and you have a really good relationship, and she's happy about coming out in these areas working with you. Now, I don't know the converse for, you know, your young lady and you've got a husband. Maybe the same things work out, but I can't comment on it personally. Okay, good luck in your career, and think about those people in isolated areas.